psychologists, therapists, counselors etc. What are some things people tend to think are normal but should really be checked out? Inability to regulate your own emotions. Also, negative self-talk. We talk to ourselves way worse than any person could. Would an inability to identify most of your emotions count? Therapist, how do you feel? Me, oh so we are starting with the complicated shit right off the bat? Sir, I already told you that I am not an emotion identifying person. You're refusing to help me, so I'm going to leave. I'm curious how much procrastinating and or lack of motivation to do stuff is normal and how much isn't. From what my therapist told me, if you would simply rather be doing other stuff that's perfectly normal, but if you absolutely could not bring yourself to do homework there's something wrong. I used to have severe anxiety attacks about homework, to the point where, when I needed to do it, I'd either be completely drained and go to sleep regardless of time of day, or have a huge breakdown. How did you break the pattern? Antidepressants and add medication tbh. Thinking that 5 hours of sleep per night is okay. Rapid weight gain or loss with no obvious medical cause. Relationship problems. Don't get me ducking started. Duck, if I go to sleep right now I'll get 5 hours. Go to sleep op. People normalize abusive behaviors by loved ones all the time. Being able to identify your own personal boundaries and then enforce them with others for your own well-being is, unfortunately, not innate. What are some non-obvious abusive behaviors that people most commonly perceived as more reasonable than they are? When your partner downplays your interests and only encourages you towards things they think you should be interested in. When your partner constantly interrupts your flow of conversation and does all the talking, which soon amounts to all the decision making. When your partner ignores or gives muted appreciation for the nice things you do, but blows your mistakes and faults way out of proportion. When your partner draws on your deepest insecurities to win arguments. Therapist here. If you grew up with or currently are a part of a family where the whole family has to work to keep one or more members of the family in a good mood or appeased, that's not healthy. People are in charge of their own feelings. It is not your job to appease others so that they can emotionally regulate themselves. That was me growing up. Everyone had to make dad happy. Never knew if something was going to set him off. And when we pissed him off, shit would go on for weeks. Outbursts, throwing breakable items, verbally degrading you, and sometimes it would get physical. That man threw me into a wall while he was shit-faced drunk. Would have gone all the way through but there happened to be pipes. And then he would use us like therapists telling us all the traumatizing shit he went through as a child and expecting that to explain his behavior. He'd be the first to admit that he needed therapy and medication, but never ducking, did anything about it. Fortunately, he's no longer in my life. Shadow people. One question we asked was if they ever saw, heard or smelled anything others didn't. This came up more often than you might think. My husband says I smell phantom farts, but I only seem to smell them when I'm around him. Seems like he's gaslighting you. From the patient side, it took having a massive anxiety attack at my doc's office to find out that no, massive anxiety attacks in front of strangers isn't common or normal. The attitudes of their parents. No, really. There are a lot of bad things that current parents do that are just seen as normal when they're not, and they have long-lasting psychological effects from emotional damage. I'm still realizing how abusive my parents actually were years after moving out. It wasn't until I met my wonderful mother-in-law that I realize how shitty my narcissist mother actually is. Don't be afraid to reach out for counseling. Trauma doesn't have to be one big event, it can be 1,000 cuts. Just to add to your well-worded statement on the nature of trauma, trauma also doesn't have one set threshold for all of humanity. Person A can go through a certain situation and be fine, with no ill effects, while person B goes through the same event and never functions quite right ever again. Self-sabotaging behavior can ruin your life quickly. If you have an event in your life that has affected you negatively and you seem to find yourself exhibiting irrational or incongruent behaviors, see a counselor. You don't have to have any certain pathology to seek mental wellness counseling. Edit, a word. I've been trying to find the right therapist for years. When I was at my lowest point and wanted to kill myself, I called an emergency line that was supposed to connect me with the proper help. I talked to them, crying for 2 hours and begging for help. They promised to help that Monday and would call me back. I waited for the whole day and they never returned my call. Completely made me feel alone and that no one cared if I lived or died. I ended up committing myself 2 months later after attempting suicide. I also got the proper diagnosis I have been trying to seek help for 20 years. They set me up with a counselor, but we didn't mesh well, but this time I'm on medication. I feel happy, but I still have some issues I'm fighting. ATM. Here's to hoping I find the right person to talk to. I've seen a lot of people dismiss their depression / other mental illness because it's not that bad, or other people have it worse, or I can / should be able to handle it on my own. You shouldn't have to suffer through mental illness, even if you technically can. You deserve to be happy, and therapists and psychiatrists are there to help you learn how to help yourself. It's not a weakness to find someone who can assist you in figuring out coping skills or prescribe you medications to help fine-tune your brain's neurotransmitters. It's just hella expensive. I'd actually suggest that it's the opposite. There are many things that are normal that people think aren't. Feel free to answer that if you'd like. Psychotherapist here. Some things I see regularly that could have been caught earlier before they became a problem. Unhealthy coping mechanisms. For example, drinking to relax frequently or smoking a lot. Even something like promiscuity can be a red flag that a person is trying to avoid dealing with something stressful by distracting themselves. Self-harm. Hitting yourself. Banging your head on things. Burning yourself on purpose. Cutting yourself, etc. All of those things indicate that it's time to talk with a professional. Normal child / teen behaviors that are not actually normal, like running away or getting into fights. Not communicating. When this happens, something is usually wrong, not always, as some folks are quieter than others. But if a child / teen / adult rarely speaks, or if they are silent in the presence of their parent or significant other, it's time to get them to see a professional alone to have their safety assessed. I've seen individuals who are literally shut down due to having been profoundly abused by the people they live with, and one of the main signs of that is silence. I've also seen people in perfectly good homes who cannot communicate due to extreme anxiety, and without professional help it's hard for them to overcome this. Mood swings. When a person's moods change from one extreme to another fairly often / regularly, that is another concerning symptom. Sometimes they are considered eccentric or hormonal, but that sort of thing can be a sign of many problems, from bipolar disorder to post-traumatic stress disorder. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my channel for more curated daily Reddit stories.